After all these years of playing this game, 20 some odd years, I can finally live every young boy's power fantasy and become a fairy. Alright man, the Fae Dominion Precon deck list has dropped and is very well put together. Honestly, you can play it right out of the box with your buddies and have a great time with it. You'll hear a lot from other channels about how you should upgrade this deck. Fae I say. I don't like doing those kinds of videos because part of the fun of upgrading these decks is putting your special stamp on it, dude. It's an exercise in creativity. And part of the fun for me is conjecturing about the different ways you could take the deck, suggesting cards you may not have seen or otherwise thought about. That's better Commander, brother. I'm not telling you the path you should take, but opening avenues that can kindle your imagination. Choose your own adventure. But first, listen, like and subscribe. Last week I only bought one piece of bread and one sliver of protein paste, brother. I need that juice. I need that engagement. I need that blood that pumps through my fairy wings. Alright, let's take a look at the legends first. Face commander is Tegwyll, Duke of Splendor. Dude, look at this guy, it's splendiferous. 1 blue and a black for a legendary creature. Fairy noble, it's a 2/3 with flying and death touch. Other fairies you control get +1/+1, and whenever another fairy you control dies, you draw a card and lose 1 life. This is an interesting little fairy, brother. I like the drip. If I was a fairy, I'd wear a similar outfit, you know what I mean? Red cloak over armor, you can't beat that drip. Shiny headpiece makes things nice and pretty. This is a fairy lord, and should probably be built that way. There are quite a few fairies in the deck, so that pump effect is great, dude. If he's your commander, consider adding more fairies. There are about 28 in this deck, and more fairy token producers. I'm going to get into them later. Tribal pump effects would also be super welcome. Oh man, Alela's back. Hang on, dude. She's the Cunning Conqueror now. 2 blue and a black for a legendary creature, Fairy Warlock. It's a 2/4 with flying. Whenever you cast your first spell during each opponent's turn, create a 1/1 black fairy rogue creature token with flying. Whenever one or more fairies you control deal combat damage to a player, goad target creature that player controls. I did a quick video on the drip on this one. Suffice it to say, the choker, the dress, the gold piping with the knee boots is peak fairy fashion, brother. This creates fairy rogues, and rogues have some interesting support. If you want to take it in that direction, there are some interesting includes we'll hit up later. This is a commander that wants little baby spells you can cast on your opponent's turn. Brainstorm, spells with flash, cantrips. You're going to pump out fairies and slap in for fairy damage. Well, those are the 2 new commanders, but we got one from the main set, and that's Obama, the Dreaming Duelist, dude. This is what happened when he retired from the presidency. He's out there slicing people up in the forest, brother. 1 blue and a black for a legendary creature, Fairy Warrior. It's a 2/2, flash and flying. Whenever another fairy enters the battlefield under your control, each opponent loses 1 life. Sleepwalking disorder is nothing to joke about, brother. This purple-haired fairy has some nice pajamas, though. I don't know how well I'd sleep with a big old hat and spiky pauldrons, but that's nice for some people, I guess. Anyways, this is an interesting build-around that wants lots of fairies and token fairies for drain, dude. You could also run lots of clones and blink to capitalize on that ETB trigger. This goes great if you choose either one of the other commanders for your commander. Let's get into some reprints. You got Scion of Una, 2 and a blue for a creature, Fairy Soldier. It's a 1/1 with flash and flying. Other fairy creatures you control get +1/+1. Other fairies you control have Shroud, dude. This thing is $7 or $8. It's a really sweet card in a fairy deck, nice pump. You gotta pump up your fairies, dude. Get that pre-workout, get in the gym, buddy, with this Scion of Una. Oh man, this is a big one. The Glen Elendra Archmage, 3 and a blue for a creature, Fairy Wizard. It's a 2/2 with flying. 1 and a blue, sacrifice it. Counter target non-creature spell has persist, dude. Fantastic reprint that utilizes the persist mechanic to get multiple counters off of 1 sweet feral fairy, dude. This one has insect legs, man. That's fairy body modification, dude. Customize your legs, brother. This is super annoying, especially if you're running recursion, man. Great reprint. And man, this is another one, the Brazen Borrower. Creature fairy rogue with flash and flying, dude. This is a 3/1. Can only block creatures with flying, but it has this little adventure time, dude. Petty theft is 1 and a blue for an instant. Return target non-land permanent an opponent controls to its owner's hand. Very cool, very expensive card that deserves a reprint. There's a ton of utility and value here, dude, especially if you're running Alela. You get 2 triggers if you cast this, and its adventure on subsequent turns. And again, an overlapping reprint with Kindred Dominance. 5 black for a sorcery. Choose a creature type, destroy all creatures that aren't of the chosen type, dude. This gets another reprint. Too bad there isn't a bunch of fairies on the art dominating the runway with fairy fashion, dude. Maybe somebody can make an altar or something. Secluded Glen, very beautiful land. As it enters the battlefield, you may reveal a fairy card from your hand. If you don't, this thing enters the battlefield tap, dude. Has tap, add blue or black. Very pretty card. Goes for about six bucks or so. Nice reprint. It's a land, brother. You need lands in your deck, otherwise you're not playing Magic, you're just playing with yourself. And I'm not going to go over every reprint, you know what I mean? But that's about 35 bucks in value right here. Some pretty solid cards you're happy to have in this deck. It's pre-selling for about $44, so if you're into fairies, there's a ton of value right there, brother. Oh yeah, there's a lot of fairies, dude, but Hullbreaker Horror is in there too. It's an honorary fairy, it just doesn't have any wings. And you could go great in a deck with Alela, dude, with the Hullbreaker Horror. I don't care what anyone says, this is an amazing card that doubly pays off all your cheap instants. Plus, if you tutor out Cloud of Fairies with, say, Faerie Harbinger or something like that, and you have a Soul Ring out there, you can get infinite mana, brother. Who put this infinite mana in the dang Precon, my friend? Alright, how about some new cards exclusive to this Precon, dude? You got Archmage of Echoes, 4 and a blue for a creature fairy wizard. It's a 4/4 with flying and ward 2. Whenever you cast a fairy or wizard permanent spell, copy it. I love this guy's drip, dude. He's made of glass. He's got his little buddies and they're doing the safety dance from the 80s band Men Without Hats. Go listen to that please right now, then return to the video. Thank you. Moving on. This card is pretty bonkers in a wizard deck for whatever reason, and that's great. It's also bonkers in a fairy deck. Blightwing Bandit, 3 and a black for a creature fairy rogue. It's a 2/2 with flying and death touch. Whenever you cast your first spell during each opponent's turn, look at the top card of that player's library. Then exile it face down. You may play that card for as long as it remains exiled, and mana of any type can be spent to cast it. Oh my god, dude, this is felonious behavior. She's got a giant knife. That's a great way to get what you want that you don't have to pay for. This is great card advantage. If Alela is your commander, dude, you can get lands with this too. Then we have the old Shadow Puppeteer, 6 and a blue for a creature fairy wizard. It's a 4/4 with flying and ward 2. When this guy enters the battlefield, create 2 1/1 black fairy rogue creature tokens with flying. Love that. Whenever a creature you control with flying attacks, you may have it become a red dragon with base power and toughness 4/4 in addition to its other colors and types until end of turn. Very cool card. Your flyers are staying fairies, so they still benefit from the pump, dude, but they're also dragons. So it requires a board state of flying fairies, but can be a huge swing if you built around that board. Alright, and then I just wanted to mention this card, Tegwyll Scouring, 4 black for a sorcery. You may cast this as if it had flash by tapping 3 untapped creatures you control with flying in addition to paying its other costs. Destroy all creatures, create 3 1/1 black fairy rogue creature tokens with flying. This is interesting because it's an instant speed board wipe, dude. You can create a really big swing if you cast this on your last opponent's move to end step. There aren't many instant speed board wipes, so it's kind of cool to note. So how are we going to upgrade this thing? Let's talk cards to slot in, brother. Well, what if we're running Tegwyll? Well, you want to control when your creatures die, so you may want to include some sacrifice outlets or instant speed cards like the old Plum the Forbidden over here. You can cast this if your creatures are going to die due to a board wipe or some bad blocks or whatever, dude. Capitalize on their death, and doubly so because of Tegwyll. You also have classic sacrifice outlets like Attrition, dude. If you want your creatures to die, you may as well generate as much value as possible. I'm also a big fan of Crab the Unredeemed, 4 and a black for a legendary creature demon. It's a 3/3. It's got partnered with Regna, but we don't care about that. Has black, sacrifice X creatures, target player draws X cards and gains X life. Put X +1/+1 counters on this idiot, dude. If someone targets your stuff, respond by activating this red-eyed monster and draw some cards, buddy. You only need to hold up 1 black mana. You have a little insurance plan right there. There are a myriad other sacrifice outlets. You probably want 4 or 5 in a Tegwyll deck. And listen, man, there are some really sweet fairies that got left out of the Precon, and the most obvious include, no matter who you choose as your commander's Bitter Blossom. It's 1 and a black for a tribal enchantment fairy. At the beginning of your upkeep, you lose 1 life and create a 1/1 black fairy rogue creature token with flying. This has some crazy art treatments. There are a bunch, dude. It's about $20 currently. There's a reason why this is so pricey, right? Because it's so efficient and a great token producer if it comes down early. You also have Spell Stutter Sprite, 1 and a blue for a creature fairy wizard. It's a 1/1 with flash and flying. When this guy enters the battlefield, counter target spell with mana value X or less, where X is the number of fairies you control. Bro, look at that art, dude. She's got some style. She's hanging in the clouds, brother. This has flash, goes great with Alela and Tegwyll. Faerie Mastermind, 1 and a blue for a creature fairy rogue. It's a 2/1 with flash and flying. Whenever an opponent draws their second card each turn, you draw a card. 3 and a blue, each player draws a card. This guy's Yuta Takahashi, dude, and he won the world championship, and I'm sure he said, listen, make me a fairy rose water, just do it. Powerful little card for $5. Also has flash, goes great with Tegwyll and Alela. Hey man, I just wanted to mention Fairy Artisans because I like this card. I don't know if it necessarily goes in either one of these decks, but it's a generically sweet fairy, so here you go, dude. It's under $2. Goes better in Tegwyll, I guess. Alright man, this is a good one. Vendilion Clique, 1 blue for a legendary creature, fairy wizard. It's a 3/1 with flash and flying. When this clique or click enters the battlefield, look at the target player's hand. You may choose a non-land card from it. If you do, that player reveals the chosen card, puts it on the bottom of their library, and then draws a card. This is another flashy fairy, dude. Listen, you can choose yourself too if you want. I wonder what these fairies are doing in the woods, brother. Looks like exotic Japanese lantern flies in there. You also have the old Mistbind Clique, dude. 3 and a blue for a creature, fairy wizard. It's a 4/4 with flash and flying. Champion a fairy. So when this enters the battlefield, sacrifice it unless you exile another fairy you control. When this leaves the battlefield, that card returns to the battlefield. If you do that with a token, it ceases to exist in the exile zone, so just keep your eye on that. But when a fairy is championed with Mistbind Clique, tap all lands target player controls. This has flash as well. Very cool card. You can tap down all your opponent's lands and make them skip their turn, basically. Unless they have some instant speed shenanigans they can do in response. Now remember, Tegwyll can also use some generic tribal payoffs like Kindred Discovery. You got Vanquisher's Banner, which just got 3 reprints. Patriarch's Bidding. You're going to lean into fairies and do some pretty cool stuff, dude. And if we build into Alela, we're making fairy rogues. And rogues have some interesting synergies. You have cards like Knowledge Exploitation, 5 blue for a tribal sorcery rogue, has Prowl for 3 and a blue. You can cast it for its Prowl cost if you dealt combat damage to a player this turn with a rogue, which is probably pretty likely because you're going to be making fairy rogues that are flying, brother. Search target opponent's library for an instant or sorcery card, then you may cast that card without paying its mana cost. That player shuffles. Very cool card. If you cast this for its Prowl cost, you're getting a potentially very broken interaction, dude. You could also use this politically to get a board wipe for removal or whatever you need. Take a look at Anawan out there, dude. 2 blue and a black for a legendary creature vampire rogue. It's a 2/4. Other rogues you control get +1/+1. Nice little anthem there, dude. Whenever one or more rogues you control deal combat damage to a player, that player mills a card for each 1 damage dealt to them. If that player mills at least 1 creature card this way, you draw a card, dude. That's amazing. This is an anthem for your fairies and can be a pretty decent card draw engine, dude. If you lean into mill, you can pack in some sweet recursion for extra value. And you got the killing Quill out here, dude. 1 black for a legendary creature vampire assassin. It's a 3/2. Whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, exile it with a hit counter on it. Assassins, mercenaries, and rogues you control have Death Touch, and whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, you may remove a hit counter from a card that player owns in exile. If you do, draw a card and create 2 treasure tokens, dude. Creatures are gonna die. This is Commander. This and cards like Dauthi Voidwalker, these create a situation where players can't recur their stuff. It's exiled, dude. Destroys graveyard synergies. And we're gonna have some rogues hanging around from Alela, dude. This is awesome. How about the old Prosperous Thief out here? It's a human ninja, man. Whenever 1 or more ninja or rogue creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, create a treasure token. That's fantastic because our fairies are gonna be rogues. Alright, one more suggestion. We got the Biden of Thassa. 2 blue for a legendary enchantment artifact. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you may draw a card, dude. You don't have to. 1 and a blue and tap. Creatures your opponents control attack this turn if able. We have a similar card already in the deck with Reconnaissance Mission. The second ability, though, can be really clutch, dude, and you open your opponents for crack back. There are some interesting things that can happen with that. They don't have to attack you, right? And if Alela has goaded some of them, you can force some bad situations for your opponents. Alela seems to be pretty control-y. I'll say that. So yeah, man, this is a very interesting deck. It seems packed with value. For me, Alela seems the more compelling commander. It's like a limited Talrand, I guess, you know what I mean? It's not strictly better, it's not strictly worse. But I love Talrand, and with that sweet goat effect, dude, that's kind of icing on the cake. Remember, you're not goating too much. It's 1 or more fairies, and you're only creating a max of 3 per go-round. Tegwyll seems like a generic fairy pump commander. I like the death trigger, but it needs more of a build around, dude. You need sack outlets. But so does Alela. Both of these need a build around. But that's the fun of Commander, dude. You can buy this thing, customize your deck to make things happen, brother. But there are some really interesting pieces here you can use to go either way. Honestly, the mana base needs like 4 more dual lands, 2 less lands in general. 37 is going to do it for this. And put in Everflowing Chalice to expand the infinite combo with Hullbreaker Horror. So what do you think of this fairy deck, dude? This looks like a ton of fun for $44 or so. Check it out. Sneaky G from Better Commander signing off.